Jordan, it's great to have you as a part of my program. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you taking this time. We're going to be talking about attention in relation to overall well-being and in relation to performance enhancement. Let's start with overall well-being.
Speaking of attention in general, take your thumbs out in front of you. And as you have your thumbs out in front of you, I want you to pay attention to the space right in between where your thumbs are meeting. Yes. So right now your attention is external and it's very, very narrow at this one space in between your thumbs. Now, I actually think you're going to knock me out in the head as you take your thumbs apart, but still pay attention to your thumbs as they're moving wider into your periphery.
Okay. Ooh.
Yes. Okay, so then stop once they get out of your periphery. Yeah. So now your attention is still external, but now the lens is a little bit wider. Yes? Okay, so then we're going to bring them back in, bring them closer in. So you have an ability to have this external awareness at a wide lens and then also at a very narrow lens. And now I would like for you to close your eyes. You can relax your hands down. And as you close your eyes, you can take your attention to this general feeling of how are you right now? What's the weather pattern like inside of Carl right now? And it can be anything from excited, nervous, anxious, happy, you name the emotion, it can be any of those. And then, so we've switched from an external attention to an internal attention. And then with that internal and external attention, we still have that lens that we can look at, what's the weather pattern like inside of myself right now, to very, very narrow and specific focus of attention internally, saying, I'm going to pay attention to my breath as it hits the top of my mouth just underneath of my nose. So we can see the manipulation of attention.
Very specific to very broad.
And then again, making that distinction from external to internal.
Okay.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to make that distinction before we talked about the difference in how to apply attention for well-being versus performance. Again, this is an art and a science.
Sure.
So in terms of well-being, I find it incredibly useful to draw people's attention to, hey, there's this internal world and this internal framework of an emotion, a thought, an emotion has a physiological response inside of your body. Stress has a physiological response inside of your body.
Right.
And so often we cut that off because we don't have time to pay attention to it. So we become desensitized to it.
Right.
So where along the spectrum of attention being internal or external for well-being, I think of attention as filling in the missing component of, hey, Rick, I need to pay attention to what's actually happening inside of me right now, which is completely contradictory, not completely, but contradictory to what we would do for performance enhancement.
Sure.
When I'm cueing athletes to complete something, if I am thinking of every last muscle that is moving my bones and my body in a particular pattern, it's going to be analysis paralysis.
Right.
So I need to cue specifically to what the effect of my action is going to be.
Okay.
And hey, if I can link it to some model of how do I perform a squat, why don't you sit down in that chair? If I can link it to something that's already existing in a pattern in my mind, it's easier for someone to access, whether they're an elite athlete or they're a novice mover.
Right. That's a really good point. So attention in relation to overall well-being, and we tie that, because everything is tied in with everything else, right?
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And tying it in with performance enhancement. What's another way that you would try to tie in attention with, let's say, performance enhancement?
Sure, that's a really awesome question. So what we were just talking about in terms of well-being, mindfulness is a huge buzzword that has been flying around the media left and right.
Yeah,
and I would couple those. There are some other very meaningful, wonderful things about mindfulness that you would add to the conversation there. But in terms of performance enhancement, as we were moving our thumbs back and forth, each situation that we find ourselves in demands a specific type of attention and also arousal regulation. What is my physiology doing? Am I ready to be a linebacker? And what does my attention need to be like versus am I putting a golf ball? And even on the golf range, how does my attention shift from very wide and external, listening to what's around me, also observing what's happening with wind? That's
Sure,
going to affect the trajectory of my ball. So if I can be very systematic with my attention and then also be able to move my attention effectively from internal to external to wide to narrow, I become wise at managing my attention for the desired outcome of whatever that desired outcome is going to need to be.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, let's say, a linebacker, and you're in front of 80,000 people trying to gain the inner focus. I imagine when they're new at it, it might be kind of difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
Do some of them ever have continued difficulty with that type of internal focus?
Absolutely. So you bring up an element of stress. So I call it that so that we can relate it to both the well-being side of things and the performance enhancement side of things. In a well-being standpoint, maybe it's that overall general stress and the cortisol that ends up being released into the body from that situation. And then in a performance situation, how do I manage my attention to relevant cues in the environment? So if this is for a performance, as I become more of an expert, I'm better able to select out what the actual relevant cues are. I trained a triathlete, and I've been training with him since probably his second triathlon. He's done his 10th this year.
Wow.
And we often go back and recall that, I used to get really nervous, and I always remember you saying, what's the important thing to pay attention to right now, to not be thinking about all the things that could go wrong, but what is my goal and my attention intention right now.
I can actually relate to that in recording videos because I'm thinking about the timer, I'm thinking about the content. This is really a good point for me in doing a lot of different things. Even with group fitness classes, sometimes I seem to get a little distracted.
Sure.
Or even with a one-on-one client, where if I focus, to pay attention in a different way, it could be more beneficial to them. And me.
And I think that there's not necessarily a right or wrong here, because there's value. All of these are skills. So we have physical skills and we also have mental skills. And this is just mental skills training. And I remove the just, because mental training skills are very, very important, very relevant in most situations. So as you need to be thinking about the timer and need to be thinking about the color, what should I wear tomorrow for there's many things that you would benefit from thinking about. And as you progress your profession as an interviewer, those things become more automatic, and that's just an indication of learning. So eventually all of those things start to come together and to become automatic, and they pull less from this limited capacity of attention that is actually up here.
That makes sense.
So you brought up a good point earlier, two things. One of them was distraction, and we've been pointing to mind and brain. So there's two modes of the brain, and where mental training may become fruitful for people is to learn and to create a relationship with the distracted or default mode of the brain. Our brain is actually defaulted to be, wait, what time is it? I have to do this class, and then I have to do the laundry, and then our default mode is actually the original state of the brain. If we are able to hone attention in, focus it on a specific point, there's actually a different network in the brain that's lit up, that is also associated with so many wonderful executive functioning aspects of the brain and so many other so many other cognitive benefits of the brain, which there's plenty of neurological research out there that points to some of those specifics, and neurobiological research out there. So it's not just the changes that we see in the brain. We're able to track those brain changes now because of the different technologies that are available, which is awesome.
Right. And we can train ourselves.
Right.
Which I'm going to be working on.
Excellent.
It's a continuing process, though. If I learn, it's like managing different things. I've noticed I manage distraction differently than I used to, but I still am distracted.
Interesting.
You know?
I wonder what I'm curious to know about how you used to manage it and how you manage it now.
I'd say now it has to do more with being aware that I don't need to constantly check certain things, like maybe the phone for a message or the watch for the time, because if I have 20 minutes left in something and I know there's absolutely no way that I've exceeded 10 minutes within that time frame, I really don't need to check the clock again. I do this in fitness classes, I do it with clients. That's probably a whole nother video. But I think the whole idea of retraining yourself can really help to improve the quality of life, basically, and you can be much more productive.
But you're right; it does take training. I remember there was a study that they did with students and cell phones, and I need to check Facebook.
Right,
What happens if we just automatically take it away? Biochemically speaking, all of the markers of anxiety and stress are released into the body because I've created this habit of needing to check my Facebook.
Because everything's in your phone. I mean, for a lot of us, your email, your banking info, your all methods of communication, Facebook, text, email, everything. So I actually can relate to that to a degree. Interesting. Any last words you wish to share before we wrap it up?
Perhaps that mental training and physical training are just as important to each other. And actually, there was some recent research that looks at integrating the two of them at the same time, which is really where I'm looking to go with a little bit of brand creation around programming for, all right, what does the mental training program look like alongside of the physical training program for this particular demographic or this particular individual. So that's really what my passion, purpose, and intention is about these days.
We'll have to do more of these in the future and keep track of where you're at so we can bring it to people. So, Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking this time to share. And hoonsahealthy.com, folks, that's the website to go to. Also, I'll have contact information for Jordan at the end of the video in the credits. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.